Good afternoon. Hi, everyone. I'm Marwa Bassiuni with BioForward. I'm excited to welcome you to our afternoon session, Emerging Growth Companies. We would invite you to join us for the vendor fair and networking event immediately following the session. A special thank you to our sponsor, Kramer Brothers. Please join me in welcoming Greg Callan, Vice President of Client Services at Kramer, who will introduce today's session.
Thank you, and good afternoon. My name's Greg Callan, Vice President at Kramer Brothers. We're thrilled to sponsor this afternoon's session, Spotlight on Emerging Growth Biohealth Companies, and proud to be a longtime sponsor and supporter of this event and the biohealth community overall. It's been really exciting to watch Lisa Johnson and the entire BioForward team grow this event and continue to help this industry develop and prosper right here in Wisconsin. Kramer Brothers' roots as a construction manager in this industry dates back to our early bioscience projects in the 1980s. For those that are old enough to remember those times, we fondly remember MTV, big hair, bag phones, and dial-up internet. Lots has changed since then, and we're appreciative of all of our bio clients who allow us to build innovative, industry-leading environments to help make their dreams and hopes a reality. Back in the 1980s, we started working with one of the emerging companies in the industry, a company called Promega Corporation, based right here in Fitchburg, Wisconsin, and now an international powerhouse in the biohealth industry. Please join me in giving a warm fall pumpkin spice latte welcome to Sarah Duellman, Biotech Industry Strategy and Growth Lead at Promega.
All right, we'll let the music play. Come on up, guys. All right, thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Thank you, Greg, for the nice intro. It is certainly appropriate that Kramer should introduce a speaker from Promega as their key partner in building our beautiful campus down in Fitchburg. Big fan of the work over at Kramer Brothers. So today I'm really excited about this panel, Emerging Growth Companies. So we're going to hear from 3 leaders in the industry from 3 companies here in Wisconsin that are moving beyond startup and entering all the challenges that face as you scale and grow, recruit talent and funding. So they have a lot of great insight to share. The discussion will focus on the strategies they've used and some of the lessons learned and challenges they've faced. The 3 leaders up here, I'm joined by Eric Horler, President and CEO of AIQ Solutions, Bryan Glaser, Senior Vice President of Business Development at Invenra, and Brock Hensen, Chief Operating Officer of EnsoData. So logistics, they'll each come up and share a few slides on their company and what they're working on. And then I have a few questions to kick off the discussion. We really would love for this to be really interactive though, so you can see the 2 microphones in the audience here. So start thinking of questions you have for them, and then we'd love for you to come up and ask and learn from these guys. So, Eric, take it away.
Thank you, Sarah. All right, so as Sarah mentioned, we're each going to share just a little bit of background on our company. I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of what we're doing at AIQ Solutions. At AIQ, we have a software-enabled service for oncology. So what that means is we have an FDA-cleared software, but rather than sell that software to our customers, which are hospital systems, as a software package, we sell a service and we use the software as part of that service. Our focus is on metastatic cancer. AIQ was founded by an oncologist and a medical physicist here at UW to focus on how we can give information to oncologists to allow them to better manage their patients, their most complex, their most costly patients, which are those with late stage or metastatic cancer. Pretty much all of us have had a family member or a friend that had metastatic cancer, and we understand how challenging that is. There's some really amazing research coming out of the unique labs at UW that became the foundation for what we do. And so, oops, there it goes. So, one of the challenges that oncologists face when they're trying to manage these patients with metastatic cancer is that when you have metastatic cancer, meaning the disease has spread throughout the body, you don't have one disease anymore. You have lots of different diseases, and each of those different diseases or lesions will respond differently to therapy. In the rendering you see on this slide, you can see all the different tumors or lesions, all those different locations of disease are identified in blue. What our founders proved in their research at UW is not only do you have each of these different lesions responding differently to therapy, but lack of response in a very small fraction of the disease, less than 10%, is going to drive a bad outcome for the patient. And yet, the standard of care methods that are used to try to determine if a patient is responding or not to a therapy look at a small subset of disease and essentially extrapolate. If you really want to be able to optimize therapy for these patients, I'm trying to get this to go, there it goes, the oncologist has to be able to identify and target resistance, even if it's a very small amount of the overall disease, and that's what our technology uniquely does. We inform the oncologist on how much resistance there is, where it is, so they can target it. And this is not something that can be done manually. You need software to be able to do this. We've run studies to show that our reports, our service provides value in over 80% of patient cases across a broad range of cancers. We have a prospective study that just reported out where we found that the majority of patients, the oncologist would change their therapy with our information versus what they were getting from standard of care. And oh, by the way, because these patients are so expensive, these changes can save over $100,000 for an individual patient. So we are right now scaling through hospital systems, growing, demonstrating the clinical value of our product, and you can see some of our customers' comments on the slide. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bryan Glaser, Senior Vice President of Business Development at Invenra, also one of the scientific co-founders of the company. So at Invenra, we're located in Madison. We're coming up on our 14th birthday here at the end of October. Unlike the kind of digital solutions and tech that we'll hear from here, we're more on the life science side, where we are a protein engineering company with a focus around developing new platforms. And the area that we're looking at is primarily antibody therapeutics. And so I'll tell you a little bit on the next slide about our journey and our evolution over these 14 years. But essentially what we do is we have developed a one-stop shop, if you will, for developing antibody-based therapeutics. And our primary strategy for growth is really through partnerships. So we work with biotechs, academics, and pharma to really help them build drugs that they will advance into the clinic. Our primary platform and where our intellectual property lies is in our engineering solution for building bispecific antibodies. So taking the ability of antibodies that exist in everyone through your immune system, but engineering them such that they can now interact with multiple targets in different ways. And so the company was formed on the idea that if we can do high throughput functional discovery, we can drive new mechanisms of actions and new therapies. And so we spent a lot of time building these technologies. We launched our bispecific platform in 2018. And originally, we really focused on select strategic partnerships to grow and advance this technology. Through these partnerships, which I'll again disclose on the next slide, we have multiple programs that now have entered clinical trials through our partners to validate our technology. But we continue to innovate. And so just this last year, we launched a trispecific antibody platform, which really allows another step forward in mechanisms that you can achieve through new drug discovery. We've also changed a little bit in how we've operated. So in the early days of our platform, we really relied on select strategic partnerships where we participated in the success of the programs through milestones and royalties. And just recently, this last year, we changed our business model to really offer more of a fee-for-service way of accessing the platform to try to get it into as many hands as possible. So we can talk about some of these different ways that we've looked at growth over the years. But as I mentioned, so Invenra, we started about 13 years ago. There were 4 of us in a lab trying to figure out kind of what we were going to do to stay true to this mission of high throughput functional discovery. We got our first sort of evolution into antibody discovery and started doing partnering around 2015. So we've never been funded to put molecules into the clinic ourselves. We've really relied on these select strategic partnerships and now broader partnerships to grow the company. And so from 2015 to 2018, we really started interacting with potential partners to begin. And then, like I mentioned, in 2018, we launched our B-Body platform. And with that came our largest strategic collaboration to date, which was with Exelixis. They're a biotech company out of the Bay Area. They were a small molecule company looking to get into biologics. We essentially became their biologics discovery arm for 5 years. We worked on over 20 therapeutic programs with them. It enabled us to go from about 20 people to over 60 people, and really sprung us into more collaborations. And so we continued working in that, and then really the last phase of our growth and where we're at today launched this year, which was a new way of accessing the platform through more of a fee-for-service type offering, and we can talk about all of that as we go. But looking forward to the discussions. Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Hensen, Chief Operating Officer at EnsoData. I'll share a little bit about who we are as a company, a little bit about what we do, and then a slide on our journey, because I think kind of the contents of this session are about that and where we're at in our journey and where we've come and where we're headed next, based here in Madison. So you can see today providers use our software, our AI software, to help diagnose and monitor treatment of sleep disorders, and really any chronic condition, which we'll talk a little bit about looking ahead to the future. So we like to say that we are kind of the really widely adopted healthcare AI. It really works. It's proven. It's out in the real world. That's been a focus of ours from day one, is to get something that can get to the heart of the diagnosis and really truly help providers leveraging AI. So we've helped diagnose and monitor therapy for more than, we're closing in on 3 million patients. We're used in over 600 locations across the US, Canada, and a little bit in Latin America. And we started out and continue to really lean into research and publishing our findings and pushing the field forward, both in sleep medicine and beyond. We've got a total of 4 FDA clearances to support our software as a medical device products. We're based here in Madison. We headquartered just across the street. We've got a growing team, about to surpass 70 on the way to 80 before the end of the year. There's probably 20 to 30 of us in Madison. We were founded by UW-Madison graduates back in 2015, got our first FDA clearance in 2017. We've raised about $50 million in venture capital over our history. So what do? We use AI to help first identify patients who may have sleep apnea, diagnose those patients for sleep apnea and other sleep disorders, and then monitor their therapy. So why sleep apnea? It's a disease that in the world is 80% undiagnosed and untreated. So there's a massive problem. In the US, that's over 50 million patients, 1 billion globally. So there's a big opportunity to create a more scalable way to find and diagnose and treat these patients. It's also really interesting is a company that analyzes the waveform data off of these complex diagnostic studies. We're collecting data and training models on brainwave, EEG, EKG, respiratory movement, eye movement. It's an incredibly data-rich diagnostic study, which sets us up in a really interesting place to leverage those learnings and that data beyond sleep. So again, looking a little bit back at our path, it's really a journey focused on getting something live and out into the world to really help. So it starts with the idea and collecting the initial data, creating the initial models, getting that first FDA clearance in 2017, and then finding those first customers, those first few customers, and raising some seed money along the way from groups like HealthX, based here in Madison, and doing some accelerators. And then it moves into getting those first customers, creating a repeatable process, raising a little bit more money in an additional seed round, expanding from just helping analyze data to building more of a platform, and really continuing to leverage that data in more and interesting and more valuable ways that open up more of the market to us. So across the way, we have grown and expanded our offering and raised a Series A, and then also brought in some strategic partners as investors along the way in the form of Inspire Medical Systems. And most recently, as we've crossed the threshold of diagnosing more than 2 million patients and really finding and our scalable footing, raised a Series B with participation from venture investors here in Madison, as well as Questa Capital, a lead of that round based in the Bay Area and DC. So as we look ahead, it's how do we keep scaling in sleep and also reach into areas like neurology, cardiology, and beyond.
Thank you all for sharing your journey. So I thought we could dig into a little bit more on growth and strategies, right? So as you go from startup to scale, there's a lot of different paths you can take. Some are perhaps more winding roads than a straight shot. So just curious, I know, Bryan, you touched on this, and Brock as well, different strategies you can take from partnerships or funding, market diversification, et cetera. So curious if you guys can expand on that a little more. Maybe Brock, we'll start with you and work on down.
Yeah, I think from very early on, there's the do things that don't scale sort of approach. And how do you get those first customers? And for us as a company that leverages data, that use in the real world and doing anything to get those first customers live and see it work and generating that data that could help us improve our product and our offering and see it really out in the wild, that was the priority early on. And so that creates that flywheel. And then over time, the priorities change from, do things that don't scale to, okay, now we have a very large base of customers that appreciate stability and want us to really anticipate what's coming rather than iterate quickly and change with them. So kind of that shift, that journey over time is how do you grow to see that it works and then move into that more predictable, something that you can really scale and predictably generate revenue over time.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, the early days, it was, like I said, we were never financed to develop molecules ourselves, to bring them into the clinic. That requires a pretty large sum of money. So we knew we had to build something that worked and that people would pay us for. And so the early days we raised a little bit of money. We tried to get into interaction with potential partners as soon as we could to understand what their needs were, what their pain points were, and then really use that feedback to evolve into, evolve a platform that could deliver something to their needs. And so for us, for our platform, it was, people thought bispecifics were incredibly hard to develop and turn into drugs. And so we took that feedback and used that to build the platform. So in the early days, when you had a proprietary platform in the therapeutic space, we were doing very strategic partnering. So I had 20 potential partners or customers, and that was the extent of the people that we were really talking to. And we were able to leverage that through these select partnerships to grow. But as you were saying, Brock, that doesn't scale. These projects took many people, they took many years. There's no way you could replicate that in a way to scale. And that's what really drove us to shift our business model both from our learnings from those experiences, so we invested a lot and our team got very good at our process. We started becoming much more efficient, and we were able to change the way that we operated internally to allow us to really address a much broader market and offer those. And some of that was driven by the need to grow. Some of it was also driven by the outward pressure as more of our competitors and technologies were becoming commodity. They were starting to have freedom to operate, and so there was also this downward pressure on pricing that we had to be able to adjust to.
So I'm going to try not to repeat, but build on what the previous two have said, because it's very similar from our perspective. That I remember those days of, you do all kinds of custom stuff because you just want that customer and you want to learn from that, and you get to the point where you can't continue to do custom for every single customer. You're figuring out not just what is the core technology, but how do we get that technology into the hands of our customers? Who is our customer? What does our customer actually want to see? How do we sell it to that customer? I can remember that going from patient 1 to patient 100 took a lot longer than patient 101 to patient 1,000, right? Because you start to hit that inflection point as you do start to standardize. And from the organization point of view, it is a big shift. Getting a startup team to think in terms of, we're going to measure monthly metrics. We're going to get together once a week and talk about how are we doing against our volume metrics. You've got a customer that was ordering 20 a week, and we haven't had an order in the past 2 weeks. Well, what are we doing about it? That was a real shift from this mode of, we're just going to try to figure things out, to we need to have a standard, repeatable, growing process and then taking cost out, so that as it continued to grow, you were actually getting some economies.
I think there's that period of time too in the middle where you're not sure. There's a split attention. The scaling piece is important and you're trying to win your team over and build a team that can scale, but there's still opportunity to do new, interesting, and custom things. That doesn't go away, but what's the right priority? And as you grow, as we've grown, we're investing a lot right now in a sales team and scaling a sales team and 5xing the size of that sales team from 4 to 20 reps in the field across the United States. And we've had the ability now to carve off and dedicate a small group focused on new things and keep the vast majority of the organization solely focused on the commercial aspect of it.
Yeah, I think it's a balance that we talk about a lot, and we go back and forth on, because our company exists today because we had that flexibility in the R&D. Our whole platform is built off of a skunkworks project that someone on my team had that they were kind of developing on the side. And we looked at it and we were like, that's amazing, and we're going to move with that. So, and we've also, our founder, previous to this, had started NimbleGen, which was the DNA microarray company, and he always had a healthy paranoia because he saw next-gen sequencing coming behind it, and that there's always a new technology coming behind. So trying to find that right balance of, like you said, R&D and innovation, but also locking in processes and where that appropriate balance point is can be challenging.
Yep.
Yeah, I can hear in the background of all your stories the pivots, the challenges. So startups, I think one of the power of startups is you're nimble and you're flexible and you can respond to these things. So I'm curious to learn more about some of the challenges that you guys faced as you move beyond startup to grow, and any major inflection points or pivots. It sounds like, Bryan, you guys you're taking on a new business model even, which seems like a pretty major pivot. So maybe you can expand on that.
Yeah, so like I said, our original model was to do big partnerships. The ones that you see, the one that was announced publicly, it was $15 million up front. It had, again, it's all public, $150 million to $350 million in biobucks with, multi-tier royalties. That's a very different kind of economic ball game than searching after $5,000 orders. But, what we found was that, while we still are chasing after those deals, and we sort of have bifurcated, where we have one company or one part of our company that is doing the new technology, that is looking for that high-end work, that's sort of future-looking. But as there's more competitive pressure, it can then evolve into more of the fee-for-service side. And we're still balancing out how to do it really well, but It's two very different mindsets. It was competitive pressure, it was technology, it was commodities, it was seeing what was happening with prices in China. All of these different things were collapsing on it, and so we really felt like we wanted to explore a different way of accessing partners, and also for our model, by relying 100% on partnerships, when you only have one or two select partners, you put a lot of your fate in those partners, that they have to be successful in developing your drugs. So we could do everything that we wanted, but if they, for strategic reasons, decide not to advance something, that impacts us. So by doing this and trying to get the technologies into as many people, it sort of flattens that risk wave a little bit.
So for us, the biggest pivot was business model. When we first took the technology and transferred it out of University of Wisconsin, it was really a science project. I mean, it was MATLAB, scripts, it was not scalable. A significant amount of time was going to have to go into basically rewriting all the code, re-architecting it so that it could be scalable, be run in the cloud, be secure, et cetera. And during that period of time, we saw this opportunity to sell the analysis to pharma, even though we knew our big venture market was hospital systems. And so for a couple of years, we built up a whole commercial team and a whole strategy trying to sell this technology into drug development studies. And it was in 2023 that we finally realized that while that was intended to provide capital to the business, it was sucking cash and it was sucking attention. And so at that point, we said, enough of this, we're going to pivot. We got rid of this entire commercial team, focused purely on what our big market opportunity was, and not coincidentally, that's also when our hospital market opportunity really took off.
I think that's interesting, that the pharma opportunity, or the chasing a big one-time bolus in revenue versus that building that repeatable base of business. I think for us, we kind of chose the way of getting those singles and doubles all along the way and building that up and seeing the product used. And there were we have a couple peers who are in some ways, not necessarily directly in the sleep industry, but who were sort of doing the research and got a small initial data set and have gone for those home runs in pharma and had some success, but they're stuck. And they're coming to us now that we've built a really, more than 1 in 10 of the sleep studies that's done in the United States crosses our platform. And now the companies that started out with the biomarkers and research and for pharma studies and analysis are saying, how do we actually commercialize this and get this across the chasm into the real world? And that slow, what seemed at times like a slow growth through selling clinic to clinic, health system to health system, has now built into a really valuable base that we can leverage as we add new products and roll out beyond.
Yeah, so you guys didn't have to learn the hard way. But,
now we're dipping our toe in to see if maybe we'll.
But it's exactly what you said. It is a crossing the chasm problem. And if you read the foreword to Crossing the Chasm, one of the things he talks about is how you will think you're doing well because you close a deal, and then you close another deal, and you don't recognize that it doesn't have that sustainability. And for us, at least, pharma was like that. It's not that there's not a value proposition there. It's that it was too much customer acquisition cost, too long of a sales cycle, and too much one-off. And so you'd close a big deal, you'd get all excited about it, you think, great, now we've figured it out, we've cracked the code, and then 6 months later, you're back to where you started. Whereas, I'll agree with what you said, when we finally said, no, this is where the real value of this is, let's go for the singles and doubles, let's just really work on that market and chip away at it. Eventually, you figure it out, and you start to see the multiplier effect.
Excellent. So I want to make sure we have plenty of time for audience questions. Does anybody have any questions now? Step on up, come on up to the microphone here, please. And feel free to line up behind them too if you have questions, and we'll hop back and forth.
So you talked a lot about, or at least a bit, about balancing your commercial endeavors and sustaining the business, getting your operations up and running, repeatable, scalable, and maintaining a competitive advantage through your R&D. So I know in our interesting market at the moment, there's been a lot of talk about insourcing versus outsourcing, or even splitting the difference and having like contract-based project teams on a short-term basis to drive your R&D engine. What are your thoughts on scenarios that make sense for any of those, and how do you employ them in your own business?
You want me to go?
Sure. Yeah.
So absolutely, it is a challenge, and you guys have already talked about, you kind of have to carve out resource to focus on innovation. Otherwise, it will just get completely overwhelmed by the focus on commercialization. Relative to outsourcing, our CTO from the very beginning had the philosophy that we were not going to outsource anything that was core to what we were doing. And it can be, the companies that are selling you their services and software will try to convince you that they can do anything. We have done relatively little outsourcing. Where we have, it has been things that are we know exactly what this interface should look like. We can spec it out, go build this interface exactly to our spec. So there's relatively little, if you will, creativity. It's purely execution. We've done a little bit of that. But as a startup, we felt that the distraction and the management costs of trying to outsource, and then also wanting to make sure we protected what was really core innovation, has led us to go perhaps a little bit slower, maybe, but I think with better end result.
Yeah, I think that's always, we're similar in the sense of core, always in-house, but it's always a consideration. And sort of on the insourcing concept of it, when you hit the right point and have the right people around the table, you can do that where you create a team that is essentially its own piece to focus on that doesn't detract from the main growth engine of the business. So trying to find ways to do that. And I think we're in a market, my experience has been that there's increasing value placed on revenue, actually selling something, seeing something that works. So more focus on that as being recognized, or maybe it's necessary on the other side of things. But you have to maintain a healthy story and future as well.
Yeah, I think, and then for us, we're a little bit different because, for us, we do outsource some of our work, in our process, DNA synthesis, molecular biology, some of those things are outsourced. We also do some of it in-house, so it really depends on time versus money. So we try to keep as many things core as possible, but we will outsource as needed. But on the flip side of it, we try to take advantage of it as well, because our new business model is as a service provider. So we are also catering our services to people who are looking to outsource. So, I'm pretty happy about that model, and we've had a lot of success with. I like to joke it's the two people in a checkbook, the virtual companies where they don't want to invest in wet labs. It's very efficient to them. I think there's been a shift in our market at least where, platforms aren't as valued. It's all about the assets. So if we can help someone, they can essentially rent us for a period to build them a pipeline. They now have assets that they can move forward. So we definitely take advantage of it.
You. I have a question about funding. So I'm a service provider. We do outsourced accounting, finance, HR for early stage life science companies. We sponsor a CEO peer group with about 30 early stage CEOs, and the biggest challenge they're having right now, especially the preclinical ones, is the state of the venture capital markets and the NIH. In 21 and 22, people are closing seed rounds and Series A rounds left and right. That's pretty much evaporated, especially if you're preclinical. So what would your advice be to those CEOs that are preclinical and trying to, continue their ideas?
It's a tough market. It's really hard. I think you have to understand your inflection points and how far you have to be able to take your data package to get there. And we work with a lot of groups, like I said, this 2-person in a checkbook, and we have a lot of people that we're talking to who are trying to raise money. They like our services, but they have to be able to raise that money. And so, they're trying to understand what is the minimum amount of money that they can raise to generate data that allows them to raise money. But it's hard. there's been such a swing, at least for us. We've supported oncology, autoimmune, infectious disease. The indications that are hot have changed vastly over the last couple of years. For us at least, if you're in like ADCs, thankfully bispecifics, autoimmune, those areas have been getting funding. But there's also been a shift because of the competitive pressure from China, where people are now able to take their molecules into the clinic over there much more cheaply. So there's this extra pressure on the US. How do you actually get to that same level of validation? And it's hard. I wish I had an answer, because I know multiple groups that are trying to raise money. I think we can sometimes offer strategic relationships with these groups. I know other providers like us can do that as well, where we have a fee-for-service model, but we can sometimes defer some of those costs and go back to participating, so we can lower some of the costs for people. So I think they have to try to be creative with how they get to their data, explore angel networks, explore different groups. But I think you just have to talk to a lot of people.
Yeah, I think software perspective's a little bit fundamentally different here, but the theme is the same from what happened between 20 and 22. Having started on the front side of that, gone through that period, and now be over here. And I think while there were high valuations and a lot of checks being written, a lot of that didn't turn out well or actually benefit companies. Now, it's a little different if that means starting or not starting, but I think there is a back to reality sentiment. And while Madison, I think we would all vouch for Madison being a fantastic place to have a company. You can't, 2 Madison-based venture firms on the slide that I presented, and angels early on. But right now, I think there is definitely increasing focus on the coasts from a money perspective. But I think going there, you have to go get out, be there, meet people. It might mean conferences, in-person trips, even if it's the scrappy, 2 people in a checkbook. Getting out there and getting in front of people is important right now.
Completely agree on the getting in front of people. I've become very disillusioned with Zoom meetings with investors. You hear people chuckling. So you get on these calls and they just go Zoom, 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 Zoom all day long. And if you don't have that 3-dimensional interaction with people, it's very tough to actually get anything to move forward. So, I would also add, you have to take the time to build the relationships. It's not going to be a first meeting that's going to just get you a check written. It's not going to probably be the first visit. I have found that if you started early and you kept that investor informed, showed some level of progress, just doing what you said you were going to do resonates a lot. The other thing I would say, going back to the original question, because I completely agree, it is an incredibly challenging market, and it has been for a while. It's all about capital efficiency. And so, I think I love what Brock said about singles and doubles, right? I think there was a time back in 2022, certainly back in 2018, it was the home run pitch. And everyone wanted to hear about that home run. People wanted to hear about platforms. Right now, it's not about the platform. It's about what's a product you can deliver with a efficient use of capital to show that you will actually get customers to buy it in some fashion, get that validation, and delay some of the other growth you'd like to do.
Building startups is hard. I've done it 8 times and advised hundreds more. What do you wish your younger self knew before you started this company?
So I think if you're at the very first time going around, that's in my background before this was at Epic, spent a number of years there. And then first time in the entrepreneurial seat, there's that first, this is either going to be a home run, hugely successful in 2 years, or it's going to crash and burn in flames. And there's a lot of crashing and burning, and there's not a lot of enormously successful in 2 years. And their path to success is that growth, sustained growth over a long time, not slow, right? You can't be slow if you choose the path of raising venture funds, but it's pivoting, and sometimes it's grueling, and then when you identify those opportunities to grow faster, jump on them and go fast at them. So it's kind of feathered that into 2 thoughts that I would tell myself.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm a scientist. Most of our company are scientists by training. We get very enamored with the technology, and you think if you build the best technology, that's all you have to do. But that's really such a small part of it. The amount of mediocre technologies that I've seen succeed versus the really great technologies. So understanding, like for us, the majority of the deals that we've done have been because of networking and relationships and people I mean, especially the bigger the deal, if you want someone to cut you a $10 million check to do a project with you, it's easier if they know you and they trust you. So the amount of networking and relationship building and having people associated with your company that can make those warm introductions is really important.
Mine would go a different direction. What I wish I had understood when I started was the degree to which the macroeconomic environment will impact your ability to raise that money. So when I started as CEO, I was very focused on define your milestones, figure out how much money you need, double it, raise that amount of money, hit your milestone, raise on the back of your milestone. And what I didn't understand was there was going to be this other factor of, is the market up, is the market down, is there venture money, is there not venture money? And if your milestone is mistimed for the market, it really, frankly, may not matter that you hit your milestone, right? There's just not any money there. And so to do it all over again, a strategy that allows for more constant progress, constant good news, so that when that market is up, you can go out and tell the market a winning story while the money is flowing, rather than getting stuck potentially where you're ready to raise the money and you're in a market trough.
So I work with a fractional chief marketing officer firm with biotechs, medtechs, and health tech companies. I'm curious, and you just touched on it, Eric, how have you learned how to tell your story that's scientifically valid and accurate, but compelling to not only get investors, but also get customers to buy in and then grow that customer base as you scale?
Trial and error. I mean, is what I would say. It's doing it so many times and trying different things and watching the feedback that you're getting from the room. And then as soon as, once, and usually if something starts to resonate, you can see that. And so when you latch onto something that's resonating, okay, now let's go down that path. How is that working? Now let's build upon that. But it has been, and I guess the other thing I should say is have good mentors. So I've been fortunate that I have a mentor that attends some of the pitches we do, and he listens to me pitch, and afterwards he'll get on the phone with me, and to his credit, he's not nice. I shouldn't say that. He's a nice guy, but he's very direct, and we'll say, okay, this didn't work, right? You totally lost him here. This was working, and then the next time out, just keep trying it over again. And I would say we do the exact same thing with our customers. So that we go out, you try a message. This is something I found interesting, that I have some friends that have really, really early stage startups, and they've hired a firm to make their pitch deck. They've got this gorgeous pitch deck. And then they get feedback on it, and they're like, well, I can't change it because I didn't make it. Right? Whereas to me, so my pitch deck is not nearly as gorgeous, but at least every single time I pitch, I have the ability to go in and tweak it to get that message fine-tuned.
I think it's an important question, though. How do you tell your story accurately in a way that sells your company appropriately? I think we run into the issue, we always have, that we probably have a little bit too much Midwest modest when we're talking about our data and our science, and we are very conservative about the statements that we make, and we definitely find that there's a cynical reaction from people that we pitch to, because they're used to people pitching and really over-exaggerating. So even though we are not over-exaggerating, we sort of get viewed through that lens. And so it's been something that we've had to battle with, of how do we tell the story in a way that is honest and accurate, and how do we get people to believe it? Because the number one feedback that we get from people who start using our platform is like, we've heard you talk about it for 2 years. We never thought it was real or it was that good, but it actually is. And it's like, yes, thank you.
I think what you said on the last question too is important. The idea of just because it's great science or really cool doesn't mean that that's the story that the market needs to hear to pick it up. And there is this early on when it's just the founders or executives leading sales, you can tell this energetic, confusing story and still will a couple deals across the line from those early adopters who really want to be a part of this like rocket ship and hear the cool science. But then you hire a couple salespeople or you hire a lot of salespeople. And if you haven't honed your message to where, you know, what are the three things that everybody needs to take away? And one of them is how do I make more money? You got to get it that simple. And if you don't realize that from the founder seat or the executive seat that can, you know, bring every bit of energy and the true depth of knowledge to the solution you've developed, you'll be stuck.
Yeah, so I'm hearing in some of this, I mean, scaling, right, is beyond just raising the money. Like, Brock, you were just saying, perhaps you need to add a sales team. You need to add more talent and different skill sets. So if you guys talk about scaling then more in like talent and operations and kind of building the culture, right? It's easy when you're a group of 4 and really setting that groundwork of what culture you want in your company. And I'll be curious to hear operations too, because obviously building out wet lab space is an expensive and very important thing that, you know, your company would have to deal with. Perhaps you can start us off with culture, operations, because you guys just moved into Elemental.
Yeah. I mean, it's totally different at every stage of growth. You know, like you said, 4 people versus 60. You know, yeah, the early days we were in a small lab about the size of this stage, and we had our lab and a foosball table, and you know, and got things done. And you know, we were always really focused in the early days, especially of being very strategic about our hires. We wanted people that we hired that knew more than us. We wanted them to bring something to help us grow into space. And you know, we can talk about the Madison area. Madison is phenomenal for scientific talent. What we struggled with though is, especially in those days, it didn't have a lot of experience in Madison doing antibody drug discovery. So we had to figure out, how do we bring people from the coasts? You know, how do we steal from these environments? And it was challenging. There wasn't a big anchor where to convince someone with a family on the coast to come to Madison for a little startup, where if it goes away, what do they do with their family? And so, you know, we found good luck taking postdocs who we could offer them a rapid path to career advancement. People that were retired and their kids were in college and they might like the Madison atmosphere, we had luck with that. But that was probably one of the bigger challenges from growing. And then, you know, the space, you know, like you said, we're in Element Hall now, but we were probably a cancer on the MG&E Center. And literally we started in one room, and I think by the time we were done, we had 19 different rooms across the whole space in 3 different buildings, and we're slowly spreading across. But you know, we had to, our building is amazing, but we had to wait a year or 2 for it to get built so we could actually move into it. So there's some challenges like that. Finding wet lab space is hard. We looked all over the place. We looked at the old Oscar Mayer when they were looking at renovating that, but ultimately waited for a building to be built.
I believe you guys started before Forward Biolabs too, right?
Correct.
I'm a huge advocate for Forward Biolabs and what biotech incubators in general can do for the ecosystem to allow companies like you to get going faster and more cost effectively. But you would have had to build out all your lab stuff.
We were eBay shoppers. We bought so many weird equipment off eBay that we would never, like, I remember a piece of equipment came and it came with the computer, and you needed the username and password to get into it, and we never got the username and password, so we couldn't actually get into the equipment. And like, yeah, I mean, we were building our own lab desks, and like, it was crazy, but.
Yeah.
So one of the nice things about having a startup and starting from basically zero is we were able to be very, very intentional about what culture we wanted. And we literally sat down and defined the culture we wanted. And we made posters. We got teased a little bit for that. You have no employees, but we had culture posters. But it also meant that when we were hiring, we knew what we were looking for. You know, everything that they always say, as a leader, you over-communicate, right? You just keep pounding and pounding on the things that are part of your culture. You try to hire for it, but what's more important than that, in my opinion, is knowing very quickly if somebody who you have hired is not a good fit and acting on that quickly. To me, that's a lot harder than saying we're going to go hire someone that fits the culture. It's because you're never going to be perfect. I think we've done a pretty good but not great job of that, not as good as I wish we had done in hindsight. And then, despite all of that, you will have things where you do need to make some adjustments. And so as an example, we started off as a software company. And so early on, you're just focused on, we need some really smart people that can deliver. We don't care if they're working at 2 in the morning or if they're working at 7 a.m. All we care is that they are delivering. And that was awesome until you start scaling a service to hospitals. And guess what? Doctors see patients on December 26th at 9 a.m. And so we did have a situation where we had to say, okay, we're going to have a slightly different subculture within the operations team, where we have to have vacation coverage, we have to have holiday coverage, et cetera, versus our culture within the software development team, which was still, yeah, you do your best work at 2 a.m., great. And we've just sort of, done our best to kind of move with it.
And there are employees that are there for the explore but not for the exploit phase, and that is okay. There may be another opportunity for them to go find that fit if it's in a role that can't adapt, but you are going from the testing out R&D of what's going to be next to like pedal to the metal, because it's a different mindset. And there's a true north that you can build as a company that should live across a culture that should live across those stages. But not everybody, not every employee is interested in both of those stages.
Yeah, when you start bringing on HR and quality and things like that, it changes the company, in a good way. But like you said, not everyone is built for that. I remember joking previous to Invenra, where I was very confused why organizations had certain policies and things like that. And when you actually have to build it, it starts making more sense. It's complicated to bring in these systems. Like when you said, for us, the sequences that we develop are the most valuable thing we have. We cannot mess these up. And how do you actually build a system to do that? A bunch of R&D people are probably not the group to do it.
Yeah. Are either of you big enough to have a purchasing department?
No.
We have some people that handle purchasing.
We have a process.
Separately?
We have one or two people.
Okay.
I don't know if it's a department.
I've always said when we get big enough to have a separate group to buy things, then I'm ready for my next startup.
All right, we're coming on time. I think the last question, so if we have entrepreneurs, startups in the audience, what would be your one key piece of advice for them? Whoever wants to start.
I think this advice applies to a lot of things, whether new grads or people just go try something and do something. You can sit and think about it a lot. Or you can wonder what's perfect or what's the right company to start, and you have to have enough there. Or you can wonder, is this the first job? Is this the right job for me? At any of those stages. But going and doing something, you will learn. Just like, should we go pilot this or pilot that? It's like, just pilot it and learn from it, and then move quickly. Either adapt it, get rid of it, measure it to know if it's working, but do something.
Yeah, I totally agree. On that, have that flexibility, because if you go and do it, where you are years after is probably not where you thought you were going to be when you started. But you have to do it. You have to try. That's how you learn. And like I said, our most of our survival is because we didn't get so stuck in a mindset of what we were going to be. We saw an opportunity from what someone on our team developed, and we that's way better. So let's do that. So always sort of being aware of the environment, the external pressures, the competitive landscape, and monitoring what you're doing and having that flexibility to change if necessary.
So it's actually really bad to go last, because I was going to say, if you're not sure what to do, do something and learn from it. So I'll yes and to what they're saying. And I guess the only thing I would add to it is that it's really about resilience. And things are going to go wrong on an almost daily, if not more frequent basis. And it doesn't really matter so much that things are going wrong. When something bad happens, you just say, okay, how do we work the problem? And you just keep working the problem and keep hanging in there and make sure that you're somehow moving forward.
All right. Thank you all for joining us, and please join me in thanking our panelists.
Thank you again to our panel, and thank you to Kramer Brothers for sponsoring this session. A couple of quick reminders. So we have our vendor fair and networking session right after this downstairs where the vendor booths are. And then a reminder, if you are coming back for day 2, please hold on to your name tags. And then if you're not, you can drop it off at the check-in booth. Okay, thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you again.